Hello there, I'm Elle Spada and I'm your host for Your Need to Know. Your Need to Know is a show that airs about the community affairs, issues that are important for those of us in Fairfax County. My guest today is Josh Smith. He is the Environmental Health Supervisor of the Disease Carrying Insects Program for Fairfax County Health Department. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us today. The Division of Environmental Health, what does that division do, and how does that connect with Fight the Bite?
So the Division of Environmental Health does quite a few different things. A lot of it is regulatory work that's done, but we do things to help improve public health by preventing, minimizing, and eliminating exposure to things like biological, chemical, and physical hazards through a variety of regulatory activities, things like permitting and inspecting businesses and public facilities. We also do investigating of reports of public health and safety menaces anywhere in the community. Some of the places that we inspect are places like food establishments. We also do inspections of tourist facilities, marinas, tattoo parlors, things like that. And then there's our program, the Disease Carrying Insects Program.
All right, so that is your specialty, the Disease Carrying Insect Program. All right, so that reminds me of, well, this time of year, mosquitoes, this time of year, ticks. Why do we need to think about mosquitoes and ticks this time of year? That's the question most people ask me about when I said I was going to do a show on insects and, tick prevention. They're worried about ticks, but why should we be worried about mosquitoes?
Yeah, well, both mosquitoes and ticks can transmit diseases to people. Not every single mosquito or tick is going to transmit, and not every type can transmit. But they can certainly be a public health concern in addition to just being pests.
So, what is it about a mosquito that makes it a public health concern?
So around here we have something called West Nile virus that we find in our mosquitoes every year. It's something you may have heard about. It's been around in the U.S. for about 24 years now. But it's a virus that's transmitted normally between certain types of birds and certain types of mosquitoes. But once in a while, those mosquitoes will feed on something else like a person. And if that mosquito is infected with the virus, then people are potentially at risk for contracting West Nile virus. So West Nile can't affect anybody, but the people who are at greater risk for the more serious forms of the illness are people over the age of 60. But also people with certain types of health conditions that may put them more at risk. So if people have cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, some other underlying health issues, that may put them at greater risk for those serious complications.
So I thought mosquitoes would only come out at night, and yet when I go out maybe early in the morning or sometimes even the middle of the day, I'll see mosquitoes. What is their pattern?
So, well, there are different types of mosquitoes. We have actually almost 40 different types of mosquitoes in our area.
Really?
And yeah, and most of them probably won't even bite people. But most of them are going to be coming out, during the evening hours. So maybe coming out around dusk, and they're kind of active through the night until dawn. But we do have one type of mosquito around here called the tiger mosquito, which will more actively bite during the day. Some mosquitoes will bite during the day if you bother them, if you wake them up. And go into where they're at. But the tiger mosquito is one that is very active during the day. It's also active at the time when other mosquitoes are active, but if you're being bothered by mosquitoes during the day, most of the time it's going to be the tiger mosquito.
Does that mosquito carry the West Nile virus?
It has been shown to transmit it in a laboratory setting, but we don't know how effective it really is at transmitting it in the real world.
So we shouldn't worry about it necessarily? Not
so much for West Nile virus. It is also a potential transmitter or vector of other diseases like dengue, chikungunya, or Zika. And it's not the best at transmitting those either, but it is a potential vector.
You have a specimen there of little mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Show us what they look like.
Yeah, so we have some mosquitoes in this jar here. And the reason I brought this in today is because a lot of times people don't realize when they see these little creatures swimming in the water, they don't always realize they're mosquitoes. They do have some kind of characteristic swimming patterns as the larval mosquitoes kind of wiggle through the water, and then the pupal mosquitoes tumble through the water.
Okay. I've definitely seen the wiggle. You know, have a bird feeder, bird bath.
Yeah.
I've got the bird bath on. I do try to remember to change the water every day. And if I don't, there's no question that I see something in it, right? And so that's most likely mosquitoes. But how many days is it between, you know, when the eggs are laid versus the actual development into a mosquito?
Yeah, so it can take about 1 to 2 weeks for mosquitoes to develop. In the water, it depends a lot on the type of mosquito, but it also depends on the temperature outside. Usually during the hot part of the summer, you know, as we're taping, and I know they're talking about 90-degree temperatures, you know, coming up this weekend. So, you know, that will certainly keep their development moving along pretty quickly, and they would definitely be able to go from egg to adult within about a week.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're checking, you know, your yard for containers, or you're checking the bird bath and changing that water out at least once a week, that should help control some of the mosquitoes in your yard.
How did you, we are going to talk about ticks as well, but how did you get involved in your science that you're doing now, this insect, disease-carrying insect program?
Sure. So I have a background in biology, and I was interested in public health after I graduated. And right about that same time, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, was when West Nile virus was first identified in the United States back in 1999. And so then I had an opportunity to go to graduate school to study mosquitoes and learn more about mosquitoes and vector-borne diseases. And that's how I stumbled into you know, this field.
Mm-hmm. What do you recommend, or do you have a way to protect against mosquitoes when you are working in your yard, gardening, for instance, early in the morning when you know they're already active?
Sure. Yeah, so some of the things that you can do, you know, you can dress to try and make it harder for mosquitoes to bite you. So wearing, you know, long sleeves, long pants, you know, covering up just to make it harder for mosquitoes to find skin to bite. But certainly that's not always the most comfortable when you're working outside.
Right.
So, you know, using repellents is also a really important thing to do to help prevent mosquito bites.
And spraying it on the skin, does it really work when you spray the repellent on the clothing?
So yeah, repellent can work on your exposed skin, but also on your clothes. There are also some other products that can be applied to your clothing. Permethrin, which is an insecticide, there are formulations that can be applied to your clothes, which can help protect you against mosquito and tick bites.
Especially if someone is vulnerable, like if they're elderly already and they want to work in their yard. So so that might be something good to know. If you have, for instance, an elderly neighbor who likes to go out into the yard, you can suggest for them something. I was going to ask, does the mosquito, do they have any prey? Like, do bats, for instance, eat mosquitoes, or does the mosquito have something that would eat it besides, I guess, the birds?
You know, there are things that would probably be feeding on them, you know, as adults and as larvae, but probably nothing that's going to really
impact the population.
Impact them on a large scale.
Right. So really the best thing to do would be then to empty water so that they can't lay their eggs.
Yep. Yeah. Getting rid of that standing water. And, you know, I mentioned a few of the containers that we find in people's yards earlier, but another one that people don't always realize could be an important mosquito breeding. Sorry about the noise there.
No, you're fine.
An important mosquito breeding site in their yard are these corrugated extensions that people put on the ends of their downspouts. So these extensions, they're kind of, you know, they're a little bit flexible, and they have these grooves in them. So the water can actually collect in these grooves sometimes.
I didn't even think about that.
And if they're not draining properly, or if they, you know, because they're flexible, sometimes they point up a little bit. Or maybe even a lot. Sometimes we see them pointing up a lot. So a lot of water can actually collect inside these types of pipes too. And you know, people don't always think about these because they're not really obvious water sources in their yard.
Think about that.
You know, you can look at a bucket, you can look at a kid's toy or a wagon or something, or a bird bath, and you can more easily see the water. But you have to look down in the hole to be able to see the water inside these pipes. But if you have these and they're above ground, you could certainly, remove them from the downspout and set them up right so the water will drain out and the mosquitoes that are probably in there will come out too. But you'd want to be doing that. So you can drain the water out that way. But sometimes these are buried underground, and it'd be a little hard to do that when it's buried underground.
Right.
So another thing a person could do is to take a larvicide, or one of those things that can help kill the immature mosquitoes, and sometimes there are some that are in the shape of a donut.
I was going to ask about those. I've used those back in Florida.
Yep. So you could use these to help control mosquitoes in these pipes potentially by taking a piece of string or fishing line, and you attach one end around the little donut, you attach the other end around your downspout, so it's secured. But then you would actually place the little donut into that pipe, so it doesn't wash away when it rains. But when it rains, it will wash over that little donut and help distribute some of that material throughout the pipe and help control the mosquitoes. That
is a wonderful idea. This is Your Need to Know, a show about what's happening and community affairs, issues that are important to you and for all of us in Fairfax County. We will be right back, and we'll talk about ticks.
Mom!
What?
You can't find Ichabod.
What?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.
Maria, so how's work?
It was fourth period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Hello there, I'm Elle Spada, your host for Your Need to Know. My guest today is Josh Smith. He is the Environmental Health Supervisor of the Disease Carrying Insects Program of Fairfax County Health Department. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. We talked about mosquitoes, and you gave us some very good tips on how to prevent mosquitoes from overwhelming the yard. I must say I'm a little concerned about the tiger mosquito, only because when I go out during the day now, I'm going to start searching for a mosquito to come out of bushes and get to me. But we did mention that that particular mosquito is not necessarily one that's going to be carrying all the time like some West Nile virus. It's just a mosquito of the different kinds. How many different kinds of mosquitoes, again, are there in Fairfax County in this area?
Yeah, so we have about 40 different kinds.
That's a lot, okay.
Yeah, but that is definitely our number one nuisance.
The tiger.
Nuisance mosquito, yeah.
It has little black and white legs.
Yep.
It's just interesting to me, so I will be searching for that tiger mosquito. All right, so now let's get to ticks, because when I asked around for a show, what kind of show would people like to hear about, ticks was definitely in the top 3. So I hear a lot about Lyme disease and ticks. Do all ticks transmit Lyme disease?
No, only one type of tick around here transmits Lyme disease. It's something that we call the deer tick or the black-legged tick.
Okay, may I just ask, how many different types of ticks are there?
In Virginia, we have about 17 different types of ticks. A few of them will bite people, and most of them can potentially transmit diseases, but only one is the Lyme disease transmitter.
And when you say deer tick, I see deer nearly every day where I happen to live in Virginia. So I presume that the host of a deer tick is only deer or other mammals too?
No, it has at different stages in its life. It will feed on different animals. It will take a blood meal from different animals.
Lovely.
But the deer is the most important host for the adult stage of that tick, and kind of helps it, kind of helps maintain it in nature. But in earlier stages of its life, they'll feed on other animals as well.
How about foxes?
They'd probably feed on foxes. They like to feed on small rodents and other things too.
Lovely. Okay, so the tick that's on the deer, is the adult stage then the one that transmits Lyme disease, or do they transmit it throughout their cycle?
So the adult stage, if it bites a person, if it was infected, it could potentially transmit Lyme disease to a person. The nymphal stage, which is one of the immature stages, is one where it could also transmit Lyme disease to people. That stage, the nymph, is most active starting in late March through late June or early July. The adults are active starting in the fall, but they're actually active throughout the winter. So on warm winter days.
Are you serious?
Yeah, on warm
we cannot
winter,
get away from ticks?
Well, you can get away from most of them, but the black-legged tick, the one that can transmit Lyme disease, will be active on warm winter days. When it's 40 degrees, the ticks can be out there moving. They don't move very fast when it's 40, but we certainly have some days during the winter that are warmer than 40 degrees. So certainly want to make sure that you're taking steps to protect yourself during the winter. And if you have pets that go outside, you'd want to make sure you prevent tick bites on them year round as well.
Okay, we're going to get to prevention, but right now I want to ask about what ticks look like. How on earth do you spot a tick? Like, how do you find it when it's on your clothes or?
Well, it's really important after spending time outdoors to do something called a tick check. Mm-hmm. So that's just you're just looking at your body to make sure that you don't have any ticks crawling around on you or biting you. You don't have to wait until you're done with your outdoor activities to do a tick check. When you're outside doing something, you can, check your clothes, check any exposed skin, see if you see any ticks crawling around you before you come back inside. But once you're done, you want to do a thorough tick check. Check anywhere on your body because ticks can go everywhere. So, or anywhere.
Okay.
So ticks can go anywhere, so you do want to check everywhere. But it's just a matter of looking at your skin, seeing if one thing we sometimes tell people is if you see a new freckle or a moving freckle or a freckle with legs.
Small?
Some of the ticks are that small. Yeah.
The size of a freckle?
Yeah, I do have some in some jars here. They might be a little hard to see, but yeah, some of them are about the size of a freckle.
Those are just little spots.
Some are a little larger and a little easier to see. Maybe still a little bit smaller than like a ladybug. But some of the smaller stages or the immature stages are about the size of a freckle.
So no moving freckles?
No moving freckles or freckles with legs. There is a chance it could be, sometimes it might just be a speck of dirt on your skin, but it could also be a tick. So that's why it's important to check.
I had no idea they were that small. And generally in the yard or when you are outside, let's see, I guess we'll just go to the yard. What can viewers do to keep ticks out of their yard?
There are a few different things that you can try and do to help keep ticks out of your yard. Keeping some of the vegetation cut short if possible. Ticks don't drink water, so they need to stay in humid areas. So if there's a lot of overgrown vegetation or a lot of leaf litter on the ground, those are good hiding places for ticks. Where if there's a lot of tall grass, they'll just hang out at the bottom because it's a little more humid there. Or if there are a lot of leaves on the ground, they might just crawl under the leaves where there's a little more humidity. So keeping the yard cleaned up.
May I ask about mulch? Does that help? Because a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort putting mulch down. Is that to prevent ticks from prevent the area from being moist?
That's probably going to help maintain, some moisture and stuff for your plants. I'm not sure how important they would be for ticks, in the mulch.
Would it make a difference, in other words?
They kind of want to have something to crawl up on a lot of times. So,
okay.
So if there's, grasses or bushes, usually when it's a little more unkempt, that's when you're probably going to have to deal with ticks a little bit more.
Do the ticks come in off of the deer and the other animals, or do they come in on their own? Like, how do they actually hop around and travel?
Well, they can certainly be carried, by other animals to different places, and then once they're done feeding, they'll drop off and they'll molt to the next stage of their life. But when they get onto, like if they get onto a person, sometimes people think maybe a tick would jump or fly or drop from a tree because they found a tick maybe on their torso or on their head.
Right.
But ticks, when they end up at that, on the top part of your body, it's because they've crawled all the way up.
Oh, stop! Oh my word!
Usually they're going to be getting onto you maybe from near the ground, so they'll get onto your shoes. They might grab onto your pant leg, as you're walking by. If you brush up against some vegetation where those ticks might be hanging out, they can grab onto you and then just crawl around until they find a place where they'd like to bite.
Lovely. Okay, so let's see. Crawling, you can't feel a normal person. They're just so small. Is that why we can't feel them? You're saying?
They're small and they kind of step pretty lightly. So you're probably not gonna feel them. And if they're crawling on your clothes, you wouldn't be able to feel them either.
Well, that's true. So you're saying they could crawl on the outside and then just lovely. Okay. So what can I do to prevent mosquito, or we talked about mosquitoes, but what can I do to prevent, let's stay with ticks right now, tick bites if I'm hiking in the woods, for instance?
Well, some of the things you do for mosquitoes are also going to be good for ticks. So certainly using repellents. We talked about, permethrin on the clothes is another way to help, keep mosquitoes and ticks away. Doing your tick check is really important, dressing properly. If you're wearing lighter colored clothes, sometimes it's easier to see ticks if they're crawling on the clothes.
That I've heard.
Yes. And really doing those tick checks is important.
Does wearing the perfume, so back in Florida where I grew up, it was all this about putting on like a perfumed lotion that they didn't like. Is that really a thing, or does that matter? Have you heard of that? There was some brand of like a lotion, Skin So Soft, or some particular brand of lotion, and if you put it on your legs, apparently the ticks didn't like it. Is that not true?
Well, it depends on what ingredients are in those products. So there are 6 different active ingredients that have been registered with the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, and recommended by the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, to help prevent mosquito and tick bites.
Okay. Do you know them offhand?
Yeah, those are DEET, which most people have probably heard of DEET. But there's also picaridin, IR3535, oil of lemon eucalyptus, parabenthane diol, and 2-undecanone.
Okay. I think that lotion had the eucalyptus in it.
Okay.
I think that's what it was, because it was just a regular body lotion, and then it became very popular to try it. But I just was never sure if that was actually a thing. That eucalyptus somehow repels ticks, just don't like the smell.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure of the mechanisms for how those those repellents are repelling the mosquitoes or ticks, but they do try and avoid, if your skin is treated with that, they won't, mosquitoes won't land on treated skin, and ticks don't like they won't land on the skin where the repellent's been applied. So if you miss a spot, the mosquito will find it.
Lovely. Okay. We should all go outside still and play. Yes, even though we have these. Just kidding. I happen to love being outdoors. I spend most of my time outdoors, so I'm trying not to overreact here. But I do have another question. Are ticks loners, or do they travel in packs?
No, well, they're usually going to be found, by themselves.
Yes. One score in the checkbox.
Although one caveat there is, when ticks lay their eggs, they all get laid into like a cluster.
I have
so
heard of that.
They're all laid together. For most tick species, the larval stage, which is the one that hatches out of the egg, the larval stage probably isn't going to bite people for most tick species. The Lone Star tick, which is a pretty common tick around here, any stage of that tick will bite, including the larval stage of that tick. Sometimes people call them seed ticks just because they're really tiny.
Yes, okay.
But yeah, I've seen and experienced, brushing up against some vegetation where some Lone Star larvae were and had multiple ticks,
What did you
crawling
do?
on my clothes at once. Well, fortunately, I had my clothes treated with permethrin, so I knew that was going to be helpful. I was wearing repellent, but we also, for work, we also actually keep sticky lint rollers in the vehicles with us, and I, could use the lint roller to help get the ticks off of my clothes that way.
So a lint roller could be a part of the outside chick tech. Did I say that with chick? I didn't say it right.
Yeah, certainly is something you could use to help.
The lint roller
remove
is my
ticks.
saving grace at this moment. I'm going to cement the entire yard, and I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So what should I do if I do find a tick attached to me? I have had one like once since I've been here, but it was, thank goodness, it was moving like you were saying. So I saw it and brushed it off, and it was fine. But what do you do if you find one attached to you?
Yeah, well, sometimes ticks do attach. Most importantly, you don't want to panic. That won't help get the tick out any faster. But if you do find a tick attached to you, you want to take a pair of tweezers. If you have fine-tip tweezers, that just makes it a little easier to grasp the tick. But you want to grab the tick as close to the skin as possible, and then slowly and steadily pull the tick up and away from your skin with a steady, even pressure.
Okay.
That's going to give the tick a chance to let go, because it's got its mouth parts and it's got its teeth in your skin. So if you pull slowly and steadily against it, that gives it a chance to release its teeth, and then that tick can be removed. And then clean that area with some soap and water, because it does leave a little hole in your skin. You can save the tick and throw it in a Ziploc bag. Put it in the freezer. You can put it in some tape or whatever. But you can actually bring the tick to us at the health department.
Okay.
We can identify ticks for people. We don't provide diagnoses or medical advice or anything like that, but we can let you know the type of tick that you had and what diseases those ticks are known to carry in case you do need to follow up with your physician.
Okay.
We also have an online submission form so people can submit pictures of ticks.
Okay,
for our
tell us
online
real
form,
quickly
too.
then the website for more information.
Sure, it's fairfaxcounty.gov/health/fight-the-bite.
Thank you. My guest has been Josh Smith, and this is Your Need to Know. Thank you for joining us. Your Need to Know is a show about all things happening in the community of Fairfax and what's important to the people in Fairfax County. I'm Elle Spada, and I'll see you next week.